President Donald J. Trump has just declared that former President Joe Biden's pardons are null, void, and no more. Now, the legacy media outlets are losing their minds. CNN and MSNBC are furious. Well, what if we told you, folks, that it might have less to do with principle and more to do with ratings? Get ready, because we're going to expose how President Trump may have just buried the last remaining hope for the legacy media. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Pro Channel. It is a joy to have you here with us, where our job is to add value to your day. That is what we are underway in doing. And we have Ron Coleman, an expert extraordinaire, with us today. Ron, how are you, sir?
I'm all right, thanks. I don't know if I'm an expert extraordinaire, but I'm a lawyer who thinks a lot about politics and sometimes gets to get a little bit involved in things. So, let's give it a shot.
Let's give it a shot. And as we get started, clarification, Ron, you have represented President Trump in the past. You have no knowledge, inside or otherwise, in regards to the pardons. Is that correct?
It's correct. It's also, I am representing him in basically a commercial matter, a copyright case arising from the campaign still, but not only am I not an insider, I think at this point the insiders don't return my texts.
All right. Well, we're glad that you returned our text, and we consider it an honor that you've stopped by. All right, folks, let's dive in. We're going to start off with where this began, and then we're going to get into how this affects the cable news channels, CNN, MSNBC, whatever the politics might be. We're here to tell you this is going to have a dramatic impact on the opportunity for them to find ratings. Here's how it began with Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary. Here we go.
Sure. Good to see you.
Press Secretary, many are concerned about the validity of President Biden's official actions and also his pardons of the possible criminal actions of individuals such as his family members and Liz Cheney, as information is emerging that many of his official actions were auto-signed, possibly even the pardons, and without his knowledge or consent. Does the White House have any information available currently that Biden was actually the one that approved and signed those pardons? And second question, will the DOJ investigate whether President Biden's cognitive decline allowed unelected staff to push through radical policy and pardons without his knowing approval?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I can check in with our folks here who may know the answer to that question and get back to you.
Now, that question came in on March 11th, as folks can see up there. Forbes carrying this. Of course, you can find it in all kinds of places. What changed is that Sunday evening, President Trump came out and made an update to this and said that the pardons are null and void. We're going to play just a bit of CNN, and then I'm going to get you in, Ron, on your thoughts regarding this. We'll ask about the constitutionality, but also we're going to discuss the ratings when it comes to these cable channels. Here's what CNN had to say in their analysis of it.
And breaking overnight, a new, different possible constitutional showdown. This morning, President Trump is claiming that the sweeping pardons that President Biden issued before leaving office are, quote, hereby declared void. Trump asserts it is because of the fact that they were done by autopen. In other words, Joe Biden did not sign them. But more importantly, Trump says he did not know anything about them. With us now is former Manhattan prosecutor Jeremy Solin, who is with us by phone. Jeremy, I'll keep on looking this way here. So talk to me about this. Jeffrey Toobin, our friend, just wrote a terrific book on pardons and notes that it is probably among all the president's powers, the one that is most unchallengeable, the one that is most absolute. If President Biden pardons someone, President Trump can't unpardon them.
Yeah, that's generally a fair statement, and there's nothing in the law and the Constitution that says explicitly it has to be signed.
All right, we'll pause there because we don't need the full analysis. That's not our job. Folks can tune in to CNN if that's what they want, and very few people do. Sorry, CNN. All right, Ron, we're going to be held accountable if I don't ask you the question of the constitutionality. It's not the focus of the video, but let me ask it anyway. Ron, is it constitutionally viable for a president to revoke pardons from a past administration, and in this sort of novel way where the claim is due to his cognitive functions, Biden didn't know about the pardons or was not fully aware of them, and an autopen or auto signature system was being used to bypass his decline?
There's no particular reason that this question would apply to pardons more than to anything else, depending on what date we start counting at as the date when everyone agrees that Joe Biden was no longer in control of his own decisions or his putative decisions. But focusing on the pardons, I think everybody understands that there's no reference to autopens in the Constitution. President Trump is throwing down a challenge. He wants these pardons to be challenged. He believes that some of the people who were pardoned by the White House at the very end of the Biden administration should be prosecuted and should have to demonstrate the bona fides of the pardon. And it is an interesting question. How do you know you've been pardoned? And I would assume that the people who've been pardoned have letters or some kind of legal document that says that they've been pardoned. No one in history has ever raised this question. You know, we had a president who was very much like Joe Biden and Woodrow Wilson over 100 years ago. At the end of his term, he was, not much more than a vegetable. His wife was making all the decisions. And as far as I know, nobody was worried about pardons at that time. This is a different situation. The sheer number of pardons makes it something that bears investigation. But they don't teach you this in law school, and they don't teach you this on the Supreme Court. This is going to be something, the hard part is going to be figuring out how do you get a judge, and it's ultimately going to be the Supreme Court, to grip onto this. Chances are they're going to punt under the political questions doctrine, but the creativity of the Trump legal team and the Department of Justice is going to be put to, I think, a very interesting and necessary test, which, in trying to craft a way to get around the political questions doctrine and say, look, we can posit a situation where the president is brain dead for months and paper just keeps coming out of the White House. Would the court really say that was okay? If we don't have a system in place to deal with it, the court might say, well, the 25th Amendment is in place, so if that situation arises that can be dealt with, to which the response is, well, nobody evoked the 25th Amendment, and the response to that is, well, then I guess you better take another look at amending the Constitution, because the system that we put in place appears not to work.
And that's what I was going to say. It appears to not function in the way that it was anticipated. Principles are required to make that happen, and it seems that politics reigns supreme. Now, Ron, we can discuss that further, and I've got my thoughts on whether or not this is going to be successful. I think that as long as Justice Barrett is on the Supreme Court, I don't anticipate that this is going to turn out well. That's just my reading of the court, and I'm a novice, I fully admit. But I want to show you how this is being carried by the media and talk about the effect on the legacy media. They're desperate for ratings, and this is going to annihilate them in ratings. I'll show you why in just a moment. This is out of USA Today. It's by Savannah Kuchar, and it says, null and void. Trump says Biden autopen pardons are no good. Now, folks, pay attention to the headline. The headline distills this down into just being about autopen. It's not just about autopen. We'll take a look at it. But here's what matters in the first two paragraphs. President Donald Trump said a batch of preemptive pardons issued by Joe Biden in the closing hours of his presidency are void, vacant, and of no further force or effect. Biden handed out the last-minute blanket pardons to a variety of figures he considered targets for Trump's political retribution. Good editorialization there, USA Today. I'm glad to know that you delved into the mind of Joe Biden. It's a dark place. They included Anthony Fauci, former director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, retired General Mark Milley, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and lawmakers and staffers from the House Select Committee investigating J6. Now, Ron, It's this second paragraph that matters so much, because my anticipation had been that sometime this year in 2025, we were going to get probably some of these committees in Congress that were going to begin investigating people who were involved in the pandemic and beyond. I had a feeling that cable news, one of the things that might rescue them was going to be if they could do live coverage of Dr. Fauci being investigated, being questioned by Rand Paul, and Fauci can't plead the fifth because he has a pardon, so there's no threat of incrimination and all of that. Ron, that's gone. Or is it? What happens now? Like, you've been pardoned by one president. The new president says you're not pardoned. What happens now when the committees come calling?
Well, what happens before the committees come calling, presumably, is that the Justice Department chooses its best candidate for fighting the pardon claim or for overcoming the pardon defense, and it goes up through the courts.
Who might that be, Ron, if you had to make a guess? Who's the most likely candidate to...
I think I might consider putting Milley up there, because there's a much of all the people who deserve to be punished for their misdeeds. I think the Milley profile is the most compelling, because the president is the chief, is the commander in chief. He clearly was insubordinate at the very least. And there's a very, very powerful argument for saying that the president of the United States should not have to worry that the military will get involved politically on behalf of one political party, and that party acting as an organism, not even with the personal accountability of one political figure, the president of the United States, pardoning that person prospectively. And remember, the prospective pardon question is also on the table, even if the pardons were legitimately ordered by Joe Biden.
Hold on just a second. You made my eyebrows raise. I wasn't expecting to go here. And what you said is so, I just had an epiphany. What you're saying is that Mark Milley is the perfect candidate because the question that would go before the Supreme Court, and well, this ought to get ratings for the news if this happens, but the question would be, can a president preemptively pardon a member of the military, and thus the member of the military cannot be held to be in any kind of wrongdoing because he's preemptively pardoned into the future, and the incoming administration then is stuck there. You've got the head of the military and the president who can't do anything with somebody because they've been preemptively pardoned by his predecessor. That's fascinating.
I think that makes for a really nice law school exam question that I think a lot of justices... Now, keep in mind that these are all factors. These are, to some extent, they are color or background. They should not bear on the strict question of how do we know that a president's actions, and again, and as I said at the very beginning, this should not only occur with respect to pardons. How do we know that a president's actions are legitimately his actions? We don't want to live in a world where the president has to personally apply his signet ring, or make a hostage video every time he makes some kind of executive decision. But it wasn't until the last administration where we had, again, not counting Wilson, but in modern times, where we've had to really worry about who's making the decisions. So on the one hand, I can see from a doctrinal point of view why this is not a Supreme Court question. And on the other hand, if you leave it up to the other two political branches, we're not going to get an answer.
Now, I want to read directly from what President Trump had posted on his Truth Social, and I want to compare this to what USA Today and the other legacy outlets are running, because, folks, and you can go verify this for yourselves. Go out there and Google, and I want to say this too. This is the first time that we've had a subject come up post-election where when I search for this topic, and this is not just the legacy media, When I search for this topic, I cannot find the opposing point of view, the non-legacy media point of view. You can't find it. I don't care where you search for it, except for X. On X, I can go and find the conservative and the middle ground points of view. On the typical search engines and the legacy media, there is only one point of view, and it is that autopen is the reason that this is going to be voided, and that's ludicrous because presidents have used autopen all the way back to Eisenhower, maybe even earlier than that.
And not only that, there are thousands of pardons here. No one can seriously suggest that each individual, and you might think that from reading President Trump's statement, it is not very realistic to think that if you're going to issue thousands of pardons, which you shouldn't do, but if you do, that you have to sign each one of them yourself. But I would like to see an order from the president that he did sign saying, I authorize pardons in the following categories, and I authorize the use of an autopen to sign, if indeed, I don't think there's any constitutional protocol, frankly. I don't see how there could be requiring that the pardon be in any particular form. So, it's a bit of a stretch. I think the fundamental question, as you are saying, Pro, is not whether or not the autopen versus the wet signature makes a difference, but rather where's what we call the cognitive connection. How do we know?
I was going to throw out cognitive agency. Does that work for us? Is that a phrase we can use? Let me read this real quick.
Mens rea.
It says the pardons that Sleepy Joe Biden gave to the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs and many others are hereby declared void, vacant, and of no further force or effect because of the fact that they were done by autopen. In other words, Joe Biden did not sign them, but more importantly, so this is the part that the legacy media is intentionally leaving out, where he says, more importantly, he did not know anything about them. So what he is suggesting is that Biden was simply an avatar that existed in the White House and that he was circumvented because he did not have cognitive agency. He was not capable, or at least if he was capable, that the powers that were puppeteering him simply went around him to do this and that he had no knowledge of it. So that's the argument being made here, and that's what's going to play out. But in terms of, go ahead, Ron.
Keep in mind that politically, this also once again forces Democrats and members of the previous administration to put themselves in the impossible position of defending the way business was conducted in the White House, even though we now know that the reason he didn't run for re-election was that he wasn't cognitively up to it. And even though we saw in the last few months, especially, that the man didn't know where he was walking in all kinds of directions, he was rambling and mumbling. They're going to have to say, oh no, when it came to these important matters of state, that he could do. And remember, a book, Jake Tapper and his friends, the same people who were covering up for Joe Biden for 4 years, they wrote a book about how they were deceived. So it's no longer the official narrative that he wasn't cognitively impaired. He absolutely was. So this is a win-win for Trump. Even if he loses, he wins.
All right. So final question for you then, Ron. As we look at the cable news issue, and we've just done a video recently where MSNBC, the numbers are out there, they've got like 50,000 people on average in the demo watching. I mean, it's just flat out unsustainable. Ron, as we look forward into how this is going to play out, is the reason that the legacy media is framing this as an autopen issue instead of the full cognitive concern, is that because it plays to their few and lessening viewers and sort of activates them? And the question of cognitive ability puts egg on the face of the legacy media that was shilling, as you said, for former President Joe Biden. Is that the play here to dumb it down?
I don't think it's so much to dumb it down. I think it is. It does speak to what you're talking about, though, which is the siloization of left-wing legacy news. The New York Times concluded, 5 or 6 years ago, we can't even pretend to be objective anymore. The people who pay to get the Times won't put up with it. We need to serve our dwindling but rapidly committed customer base. So yes, that's what Rachel Maddow is going to continue to do, and that's what the left, everyone on MSNBC and CNN is going to continue to do. They're going to merely reinforce the existing Trump's a booby, with the without evidence kind of stuff, rather than even suggesting, what do you guys, even though you're liberals, even though you hate Trump, wouldn't you guys want to know about a really interesting legal and constitutional issue that is going to end up being decided at the highest level? That's not really of great interest to them.
That's right. That would require journalism. Well, folks, we're happy that you came our way, and we hope that we've added to your day. We hope that you're smarter because you stopped on by. Now you can tell your friends what's really going on. We want to give a special thank you to Ron Coleman again. Folks, if you're not yet subscribed to Ron Coleman on YouTube or on X, well, it should be the next thing that you do. Make it your task du jour. And folks, you can do one more thing for us. Consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, click it, stick it to the algorithms. It is the notification bell. Drop a comment down below. Join a community dialogue. Legal experts, I know every single one of you must be. I've read X. I know what happens there. So drop on down and tell us where we're wrong or right. We'll take it. Folks, until the next time we have the honor of spending time with you, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
What? What?
I put out a tweet of a fat minority with a booger in her nose, and I said, "This is an empowered woman." And Katako retweeted it.
You don't have your own X account, do you?
Oh, well, I actually created it a while ago. The greatest troll I've pulled off in a long time. Do you know how many things I've secretly tanked?
Oh, gosh, I hope not. That would make me legally culpable. But, what are you talking about?
Sweet Baby Inc.
Huh?
Yep. I'm the...
Shut up.
I'm the CEO. Yeah, no, seriously, look, this is my profile picture. Everyone's just AI. It's great. I'm so excited to gaslight everyone and see what they're gonna like next because they think it's socially obligated.
Wait, so you're... No way, you're the CEO of Sweet Baby Inc.?
Maybe. But first, you should see the jewelry company I created.
We're gonna get sued.
It's gonna be good.